first team, I'll let them introduce themselves, who worked with the International Olympic Committee, the Olympic Museum, on the future educational program. The evaluation jury today, except for Anna Ross, are Björn Walliser, Jean Chaplet, Christian Swan, and Laurent Rivier. And a great welcome to all of you as well. And without any further ado, I would like to give the floor to the team to take us through their project. Thank you.
Youth are the leaders of tomorrow. They are the change that we wish to see in the world, and together with sport, they are unstoppable and inspiring the future generation in pursuit of a dream. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Samir, and I'm from Canada.
I'm Arthur from France.
I'm Tina from India.
And I'm Montage from Jamaica.
We're here in collaboration with the Olympic Museum to provide research and recommendations towards the development of the future Olympic Museum program. Just to go over our agenda for today, we're going to go over our project plan, followed by our key findings, and last but not least, we are very excited to share with you some recommendations we have for an exhibition for the Olympic Museum based on our key findings. So first, an introduction to the project as a whole. So really the museum was tasked with creating an innovative exhibition with the theme of sport as a driver for the future generation. This is an exhibition to be launched in April of 2019, and it is to be built up and building up to the Lausanne 2020 Youth Olympic Games. And the key piece of information here is that it is an exhibition for ages 15 to 25 years old, and this is the youth category that we'll be focusing on today. What exactly was our role in all this project? Well, our objective was really to provide information and data about sport, youth engagement in sport. Now, we have a particular focus on the sports of tomorrow, and that really involves new genres of sport. And we put a major focus on esport. And this is something that the Olympic Museum wanted us to look into in depth, and this is something you'll see in the report in detail and in this presentation. We also looked at how Olympic values can be made relevant to youth, as well as how sport can be used to solve social issues. But how do we do all this? How do we organize all of our information? Well, our methodology is as follows. The first phase was really a literature review and the expert list. The literature review involved the benefits of physical activity for youth ages 15 to 25 years old. And really the expert list was a list of experts in the field of policy, public policy, sport, and exhibition design to provide to the museum so they can use them as resources in their design for this new exhibition. We also interviewed some of these experts as well. Phase 2 was very interesting, and it was a benchmarking process and best practices selection. We looked at various events and exhibitions from around the world, and this really gave us an indication of what was going on around the world in terms of events and exhibitions and what the best practices were. From this, we selected the best practices around the world, and then we selected our own benchmarking criteria for what makes a great exhibition, and you'll see that a little bit later today. Last but not least, phase 3 was a focus group and a survey. We had a very successful focus group, and we're excited to share the findings with you about that, where we had a roundtable discussion with a lot of experts in the field of youth sport development. Last but not least, we surveyed the youth themselves, went straight to the source of what this project is all about, and really looked at what they were feeling about the benefits of physical activity. Now, jumping into the benefits, as part of the literature review, we identified 4 different levels of benefits. First one being the personal level. On the personal level, what really stood out for us in the key findings was that there were physical benefits, emotional benefits, as well as psychological benefits. Now, throughout the presentation, you will see these did you know facts as well. You'll see a lot of them in the report, and they're really cool little tidbits of information. And these kind of give context to what's going on in the different levels for the benefits of physical activity. So this one here talks about bone mass, and it relates to the physical benefit aspect. Bone mass cannot be developed past the age of 25, but it is only developed with more physical activity. If we put those two things together, we can see why it's so important for youth to participate in physical activity. The next level we identified was the close entourage level. And this one actually involved relationships with coaches, teachers, peers. These were key relationships that really enabled youth to participate in sport and kept them coming back to sport as something that they could do in their leisure time. Along with this, looking at teamwork. Teamwork was a huge aspect and really contributed to the retention of youth in sport at a close entourage level. Looking at another level, which is the community level. Looking at diversity. Youth really felt, and the research showed that the youth really felt that diversity was key. Having an array of skill sets within a team, for example, really empowered them. And that's our second point there, is empowerment. Empowered them to feel like they were part of something bigger. And this is all part of our community level, as well as recognition. Positive reinforcement and feedback was key for youth retention in sport and was a benefit of physical activity. Now, looking at the society level, which is the very last level, and the fourth level, we had empowerment of disadvantaged groups. People with disabilities, for example. Again, they felt like they were part of the community, integrated into society and included into society. And this was really important because we want them to feel included. We also found a great framework called the Positive Youth Development. And this really kept youth on the right track and gave a holistic view of what youth development was all about, using physical activity as a motor. And another tidbit of information here, and we'll refer to this a little bit later as well, addictive behaviors can include bad substances, for example. A study showed that they can be replaced with rewarding behaviors. Addictive behaviors such as playing video games, for example. That was key, because an addictive behavior like that, when you play video games, you get a reward from playing those video games. And that's what kept youth on those types of video games, on those addictive behaviors. Now, this is a great view of traditional sport and the great view of benefits of physical activity for youth using traditional sport. But I talked about the sports of tomorrow and new disciplines. Esports. Brand new discipline. Great debate over this topic. Some say yes, it's beneficial. Esport is beneficial. Fan base is growing to massive amounts, as you can see here. Before the 2018 games in Pyeongchang this year, there was a showcase of esports gaming tournament. And really, this was the start of something new. The fan base was massive for this, so much so that it is now a medal event at the 2022 Asian Games. This is massive, and this is huge news for esports. On the other side of this argument, we had no. People said no, esport, there's no benefit to esport at all. There's no running, jumping, throwing, leaping, no physical activity at all. One of our experts actually said that esports is cutting into the leisure time of youth physical activity today, when they could be performing these physical skills. But we have a yes, we have a no. That wasn't good enough for us. We wanted to really see if the two could coexist. We wanted to see if the two could come together with sport and really coexist. And this was something where we found really interesting findings. Remember that reward system I talked about earlier? Video games being used as a reward system, winning those prizes, those medals, those points. This is a key piece of information, because if we can use that reward system in coordination with the technology that we have, using physical activity as a means to distribute it, it is a way for sport, esport, and sport to coexist. This is the beginning part of the first phase, and this is the literature review. I'm now going to pass it over to my colleague Tina, who will speak about the expert list.
Thank you very much, Samir. So we had all this information by this stage, a lot of the literature review, we had many interesting trends that came up. So what were we supposed to do with them next? That's where the expert list came in, and in consultation with the Olympic Museum, we had agreed that we are going to look at and also consult a range of experts, not just from the area of sports, but also public policy, academics, from art and exhibition design, and certainly sports science as well. We identified many experts, and then through talks between the Olympic Museum and us, we eventually brought this down to 11 experts that you will see in the report. And these experts, we have highlighted their background. We have also really explained the reason why we have recommended them. Now, mostly we looked at people who are doing something radical, something new, something avant-garde, something interesting in their field, really pioneers of sorts, and we got great information from them. Out of these 11, we also interviewed 4 of them in detail and got some excellent qualitative data. For example, we spoke to Paul Kakamo, who is the founder and CEO of a sports for development NGO based in Chicago, and he drew parallels between sport and life and how one can learn life lessons from sport, thus distinguishing between just physical activity and sport. Lots of great gems like that. Also, on the aesthetic and brand engagement side of things, we spoke to one of the world's leading agencies, which is Jack Morton, based out of London. And they talked to us about this very strong trend in engagement today, which is about personalization, which is about creating meaning for the visitor. And these are ideas that we have incorporated into our report and our recommendations, as you will see. So moving on then, after talking to the experts, what did we need to do next? We had to define benchmarking criteria through which you can evaluate some of the best practices in the world. So starting off, we looked at a lot of published documents, including documents which were published by the American Alliance of Museums, for example. And through a consensus, these 10 key point indicators emerged, which really are the sort of lens through which you can assess the success of an exhibition. We wanted to engage our visitor intellectually, emotionally, certainly physically, because it's a sports exposition. And the idea is to create these long-lasting memories which will lead to continued conversations with them. So again, we looked at these KPIs and decided which are the ones that are really relevant to us for this purpose, and also the ones that will allow us to look at some of the best practices remotely, because we weren't going in person and looking at each of these exhibitions or activations that we're talking about. So we came down to these, which we felt were the most relevant for this project, which is design and content. You will see when we present our survey results that the visual appeal is so important to the youth of today. And of course, engagement, meaning, and shareability, which are the trends today, where each person has this personalized experience and then feels compelled to share it with their communities or on social media. So these were the 5 sort of criteria that we identified, and through this lens, we then looked at best practices around the world. Again, we did not restrict ourselves only to sports. We did look at brand engagement. We looked at some very interesting sponsorship activations, and a lot of these are highlighted in the report. We don't have time to go into each one, but I would like to present a couple of examples. So this is Le Vestiaire Gaillard in France. It's a rugby-themed escape room where the participants find themselves locked, trapped in the dressing room just minutes before an important game. And they must unlock a series of clues and solve some mysteries to make sure that they get out before that first whistle is blown. This is something that we have incorporated into our ideas, and we'll show you that shortly. Another one, this is one of my personal favorites. This is squat for tickets during the Sochi Winter Games. And as you can see, if you need to print out your train ticket, you've got to go there and do 30 squats. And what's great about this is not just the person who is participating is engaged, but you can see everyone around is really interested in what's happening. They're documenting it on their phones. They want to share it. And this is exactly the kind of ethos that we want to create. And we'll show you once again how we have tried to incorporate these sort of ideas in our recommendations. So now, we think we had a lot of information. We wanted a plan as to how to move ahead with the project, and that's where the focus group came in to give us some direction, and Montage will tell you more about it.
Thanks, Tina. So, based on our discussions with our clients, we agreed that it was really important to include the major stakeholders involved in youth development. So, our focus group consisted of a coach, an athlete, parent, and representatives from international federations. Now, as you'll see before us, to guide our discussions, we used a focus group questionnaire that we left on the table. And initially, we started out by informing the participants of our overall project. So the benefits that we found in deliverable 1. To make it a bit more interactive and to touch on debatable topics, we used a Mentimeter quiz and asked a series of open-ended questions. So here, the most effective tool to engage youth in sports were role models. And they suggested that the best way to present them to you are in the most natural capacity, relatable to kids as best as possible. So diving deeper into our findings for the focus group, sport is more than physical activity. It's a home away from home for many kids. It's a place where they're able to learn transferable life skills such as teamwork, time management. At the elite level, the most significant benefits we found are psychological and emotional. Compared to, in the recreational participation, benefits are mainly within communities and the wider society. Despite these benefits, they also spoke of the negative impact of sports. So the extreme pressure from coaches and parents to perform well, to win at all costs, and the feeling of social isolation, of being consumed with sports all year round. And lastly, we touched on the factors that drive interest for youth towards sports. So the 3 key areas: multiple sports activities, allowing them to diversify, to not specialize in one sport at such an early age. Good coaches, those who are charismatic, able to instill passion in young kids, bring out the best in them, and an interactive environment, regardless of your race, your age, your religion, or social background. Along with this focus group, we also conducted an interview with 2 representatives from the Youth Olympic Games Department, with Mr. Philip Ferrer and Ms. Anne-Sophie Thilo. And from this interview, three important themes were noted. Key influencers. So this corroborates with our findings at the close entourage level that Simran touched on. Leaders. So using sport as a platform to mold young leaders, to build self-confidence, and to inspire change for tomorrow. And lastly, technology. So what are the creative ways that we could use technology in sports? Whether it's to enhance performance in training, whether to do hypothetical interviews with virtual reality, or to educate them about doping control. And Mr. Ferrer left us with a very inspirational message for young athletes that you don't have to wait until the latter stages of your career to become a role model. But in fact, you can start right now, today. Our last research method was a survey. So initially we reached out to both public and private schools to have a true representation of our sample. Unfortunately, not all were on board, so we then distributed our surveys by email to 3 international schools, ISL, EHL, and Brilliamo. And from this, we captured a total of 337 responses, equally between both genders, between the ages of 15 to 25. And interestingly, some of their responses were that majority of youth participate in physical activity at least 2 or 3 times per week, mainly for health and well-being. Based on their responses, even though they felt that it does create intense competition and pressure to perform well, it was really an environment for them to socialize, to make new friends they wouldn't have met if it wasn't for sports. And they also suggested interesting ways to include augmented and virtual reality into sports. So for example, allowing those with disabilities the chance to try physically demanding sports, such as tennis, or to enhance your live spectator experience, to be in a virtual world with your favorite athlete, for example, Roger Federer. And lastly, it's really important for museums looking ahead to the future to appeal to their senses, whether it's sound, sight, or touch, as these are the most attractive features for you when it comes to museums and exhibitions of any sort. So with that, Arthur will take you through our proposed recommendations.
So all of these findings led us to build some recommendation around the concept of gamification. That is a specified set of rules where visitors will have to face conflicts and obstacles made of small tasks as well as a final goal, in which they will gain some material points in order to fulfill their need of achievement and reward. So thanks to the Olympic Museum giving us the floor plan of the exhibition, we tentatively drawn a concept around this. So please lay back and enjoy the ride. So the first interaction point is the welcome booth. Here you will be explained on screens the routes you can possibly go and the rules of the games. These are personalized. Except one activity, you can go throughout the floor plan and do one activity after another, or the inverse, go from the activity 5 to 2 and so on. You will also receive an individual QR code wristband, which you will have to scan at each activity in order to collect your points. So these activities are, the first one, benefits of sports quiz. This will be touch screens in which we will have made up some questions based around our research and findings. Mainly, we will engage youth on their motivations, attitude, and values. The second activity will be Olympic values. So it will be a 3D puzzle to reinforce these values of friendship, respect, and excellence that will be broken up into letters to reassemble in order for the visitors to make mental picture of the concept to interpersonal spaces. So. The third activity is the squad powered photo booth. This is directly made up from our best practices. So here, after having taken a picture with an Olympic athlete or a venue background, you will have, in order for it to be shared or printed, to do a physical activity, either 30 squats or, for example, torso or arm movement for disabled. The next room is the 360 immersive experience. When we speak of immersive, it's because it touches your 4 senses. You will have the site with LED screens with swimmers above you. You will have the touch with real swimming pool tiles. You will have the smell and everything about a swimming pool. The next room, when you go out, is building up with the role models. Here, Olympians. You will either meet real Olympians during special events or workshops in order for them to discuss with the visitors, or virtual Olympians with pre-recorded answers of questions that the visitors can ask on tablets. The next room is linking these role models with their role as pioneers in the history. It will be small activities such as running against the famous Usain Bolt or Carl Lewis, or for example doing a wheelchair race with the first Paralympic athlete. The next room is the talent identification zone. It's a room with various equipment to assess, for example, your vertical elasticity or your reaction with hand-eye coordination machines. Last but not least, the escape room finally, again based on the best practices we have seen. So will be time activities where participants will have to solve a series of clues and questions based on the content of the exposition. So they can go back to the first activity if they forgot what the answer is. And they will have to unlock locks, and the final one will be actually the scanner, where they will be able to scan their last QR code in order to go to the checkout zone, print their results, and if wanted by the museum, have vouchers printed or prizes that they can win. So I hope you enjoyed, and I'm gonna let it over to Tina for her to guide you through the exit.
Thank you very much, Arthur. And very briefly to conclude, we hope you enjoyed that little recommendation that we put forward. We'd really like to see something along these lines perhaps in April 2019, and see something that engages visitors, that is interesting to them, educational and also meaningful. One of the biggest learnings that has come to us from this project is the fact that for any kind of youth engagement, there must be an overall goal, a purpose, and this structure of smaller tasks leading to one larger goal seems to work really well. There is a very strong positive sentiment which is associated with gaming and e-sport. It must be acknowledged and it must be utilized. We believe there is no reason for traditional sport and e-sport to not coexist. The other strong learning that has come for us from this project is that there is a global trend towards personalization. If a visitor feels there is personal meaning for him or her at an exhibition, they are likely to remember it. When they remember it, they become your organic advertisers. They share that information with their families, with their friends, with their communities, and online. And it's really, ideally, what we would like to achieve with this project as well. So on that note, I would like to thank you all for being here. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you very much to Anna for being such an excellent client, so open with great feedback. It's been a real pleasure to work with you and also with Anne. So thank you to both of you from the Olympic Museum. Thank you all for being with us.